What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another day in the word of mouth neighborhood.
Another day, another chat talk.
Excited to be back today. It's sunny today. It's the first time it's been sunny in a while, it feels like.
We just survived all of ice.
We did survive a lot of ice. The frozen water kind. We are so excited to be joined with a guest that I've been long anticipating. I personally am a huge audio geek, audiophile, speaker guy, as all of us boys are, it seems, at some time of our life or another. And so I'm really excited to be having Bart Stephens, owner, founder, CEO, capital captain, whatever you want to call it, of High Dive here with us today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on.
Appreciate the invite.
All right, so we're going to start it off nice and hot today, okay?
Okay.
What has been your favorite album this week? Go ahead and out yourself.
This week. Wow. That sets up this picture that I'm just constantly pouring through new music and discovering things constantly.
This episode is supported by Fish Creek Capital, a Birmingham-based investment firm that encourages people to think about investing the same way owners think about building a business. Steve Jobs once said, "Asking for help is a superpower no one uses." Fish Creek is here to help. Most people who build long-term wealth do it with guidance. Fish Creek Capital focuses on creating customized investment plans with cash-flowing assets. This means owning high-quality companies that generate income through dividends that can grow over time. There's no minimum investment required, whether you're 20, just getting started, or 60 and looking to grow to the finish line. Visit Fish Creek Capital at the link in the description to see how they can help you grow and build a better financial future.
Well, we've been in the lounge doing some kind of very final tuning. You know, there's stuff with the audio system that I don't think you ever really finish.
Sure.
And so we've been playing. We played something the other night that really got me. Okay, well, this isn't a new album, but we at the lounge, I don't want to jump ahead anyway, but we have the ability to play a lot of different sources, and one of the more kind of esoteric sources we have in there is a reel-to-reel tape machine.
Yeah.
And we don't expect to use it often. There's not a lot of tape out there to play, but it's kind of it's a fun option to have. And we were bringing that up in the system earlier this week, and we finally have kind of gotten to the point where we can focus on that. It's been a bit of a lower priority, but
Sure.
we played. We have the Jerry Garcia, David Grisman album on reel-to-reel tape, and we listened to that a few times as we were working on that machine, and I love that. I love that music. I love that band, and it sounded really great. So
That's awesome.
It was fun.
Yeah. What about you, Myers? What's your album that you've been listening to this week?
There's not an album, there's a song. It's called Scared by Fredigan.
Yeah.
Featuring some rapper.
Young Thug.
Young Thug. That song.
That came out last week, right?
It came out last Friday. I can't stop listening to that song.
Yeah.
Every time I get in the car, I turn on that song, and then I listen to like a few songs.
That song.
And then I put it back on that song.
That's awesome. I've been obsessed with the Marias this week. They came on after I was listening to Cigarettes After Sex, and then the Marias album came on afterwards. And I am so ashamed by this. They have like 1 billion monthly listeners, and I love them. And I just ashamed. I know that there isn't a reason to be ashamed, but I think the fact that I'm still ashamed and there's not a reason to be ashamed makes me feel more ashamed. You know what I mean?
I feel like you're not
Anyways,
niche enough.
I'm not niche enough. It's killing me. But either way, we just got to talk about High Dive for a second there, but we want to get a little bit of a backstory. So before we do, if anyone's listening and doesn't really know what we're talking about, if you came here for word of mouth and not for the High Dive, if that makes any sense, High Dive is a high fidelity audio listening lounge. It just opened up in Birmingham a few months ago, and it is a delightful experience. It has got to be the nicest sounding music. It has got to be the nicest sound system in the city that I know of, and maybe at a studio or something like that. Something would exist.
Some people have nice setups in their houses, but I can't go there.
Sure, yeah, it's a nice one you can publicly go to. Yeah. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all that, talk to us a little bit about where you're from, like a backstory, like day one. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was childhood like?
Day one, St. Vincent's Hospital.
Come on.
Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah, I'm from here. I'm from Birmingham. Born and raised here. Graduated from Altamont High School. Went to college in Vermont, at University of Vermont, and then, various stops during my 20s, but landed back here late 20s, maybe around 30. Been here since. Married, have 3 kids. Yeah. How deep do you want to go into my childhood?
Did you like music growing up?
I loved music growing up. I loved music growing up more than I loved anything else. That was music was more than music growing up. I mean, I loved listening to music, but it also, being a preteen, being a teenager, whatever, music for whatever seemed to kind of be the cultural sort of force in my life, kind of in society as I experienced it. That's how, I don't know, it was big thing for me was FM radio. 99.5, 99 Rock, here in Birmingham, and then just all the radio stations. I remember some of my earliest memories related to music are carpool. You're in the back of some station wagon in the 80s, and a different mother would drive. I don't know if they changed every day or they changed every week, but the different mothers would have different radio stations. And so, some mothers would be, real strict. They wanted to listen to soft rock, and that's what you listen to. Other times they'd let the kids decide, and we'd get to listen to rock radio. But I just have those memories I have one memory of being, one of the youngest kids in the carpool. So you're sitting in the very back of the station wagon and hearing, I think, Van Halen play like, that Kinks song, you Got Me or something, and just pressing my chest against the plastic speaker in the side of the station wagon just to kind of wanted to crawl inside it and just turn it up louder and louder. And but that time period, the mid 80s, you still had like the tailwind of 60s and 70s rock and roll, and Zeppelin and the Who, and that stuff wasn't really that old. I mean, some of those bands, Zeppelin broke up 5 years ago or whatever, and then contemporary stuff was just this incredible stew of new wave and punk, and I mean, the Talking Heads, the Police, just REM turned the world around. I mean, certainly in the South, and I don't know, I just absolutely loved it. And I explain this to my children; they don't really understand it, but like MTV was huge. I mean, when we would go spend the night at a friend's house Friday or Saturday night, we wouldn't look at TikTok or the internet, but MTV would be on in the background, for 6 hours. Wow. And Anyway, you asked me a simple question, but I love music. I've always loved music. I have always loved discovering the music that influenced the music that I like. And so a lot of times when I discover new music, it's actually like 40 years old or something. And then I kind of found that I love the some of the business behind music, promotion, and certainly, the technology and the logistics and that piece of it. I would, always go to concerts and be fascinated by the stage and what all these people were doing scurrying around, and the technology. So, yeah.
Did you ever learn to play any instruments or anything like that?
Sort of. I'm kind of a bad garage dad drummer.
Come on.
And so, no real lessons or no real great, discipline to ever sit down and really get good. But, I'll fiddle around with like a bass or a guitar on the couch. And I've played drums before with like pickup type bands. And I love it, but I've never really been like a very skilled musician. My children are, which has been great. Yeah.
Did music inform like your choice for going to school and things like that?
Did music inform my choice for going to school?
Like, did you study school or did you study music business or anything like that in school?
Well, I was going to say no, but I mean, in a way, kind of.
How'd you end up at Vermont? Like that is so uncommon for people from Birmingham.
Yeah, that people would always ask me how'd you end up in Vermont, and it didn't seem that far away. I grew up very close to Altamont, which we're not far from Altamont now. It's in Forest Park. I had an older brother and an older sister. My family's been in Birmingham for a couple of generations, and so by the time I was graduated from high school, it just felt like I wanted to kind of get out a little bit, and I wanted to go somewhere a little more anonymous. And I wanted to go somewhere. I mean, Altamont's very small. I think I had 40 people in my graduating class, and I just wanted to kind of experience the other experience. Being at a bigger school. I saw college as an opportunity to go live somewhere else and get out of the Southeast for a little while. And then I loved the outdoors, and Vermont kind of has this reputation of being this sort of, Boulder, Colorado of the East, and in the mountains.
Like agrarian, yeah.
Yeah, and so I visited it, loved it. Didn't really appreciate how incredibly cold it was going to be, but had a great experience when I was there. I majored in history and philosophy. I had a double major in history and philosophy, but my big extracurricular was the student newspaper, and I was really into photography, so I was a photography editor, and I would write about music for the newspaper and go shoot pictures at all the shows. There were a lot of clubs, a lot of music shows around Burlington, and so in that way I was involved in the music industry in college. And then I did have a kind of fun, interesting, just very lucky experience. But when I was a senior, I ran into a member of the band Fish. It's based in Burlington, Vermont, where the college is, at a record store actually, and showed him some of the photography I had of those guys playing in local clubs with other people. And he introduced me to their archivist in their office, and I got hired on as an intern working in their office, mainly with the photography collection, but worked for them for about 9 months, first as an intern and then graduated and, still an intern, but full time. And that was great. That was kind of great seeing the behind the scenes business office operations of
and
that
this
band.
is a Fish or of the record store that
Fish,
you were
the band.
Fish had an archivist.
They had an archivist.
That's awesome.
Well, it's like the Grateful Dead, where people really value the law of concert recordings. And so, you form in 84, 85, and you tour for 10 years, and you have some full file cabinets now of like tape and photography, and they were smart, I would say mature guys, and took ownership of their business. And they were organized, and again, like the Grateful Dead, I mean, their success economically took place outside of traditional radio and MTV and record companies, and so they had to form their own business operation to support that, and they have a huge archive.
So cool. Yeah, that's so crazy. I mean, you were on the Fish train. I mean, Fish is still like one of the most popular, like as a cult following. And you just randomly ran into the guy back when you were in college. That's awesome.
It was that was a great experience, and yeah.
All right, one of the things I want to double click in on there before we move on to the high dive. So I love talking to people who are a part of Birmingham during different generations. We were just talking to Duquette about this the other day. If you know Duquette, but you grew up in Forest Park in the '80s. You said,
yeah.
What the heck was Birmingham downtown like in the '80s?
Well, downtown, I want to be clear about it. Like, I would say that culturally, I went to Altamont, I grew up in Birmingham city limits, but I mean, culturally, I was kind of raised in the Homewood Mountain Brook.
Okay.
More than downtown.
Sure.
But we certainly spent a lot of time downtown. And I mean, downtown was in the 80s, just to cut to the chase, was a drag. It was emptying out, continuing to empty out from White Flight over the mountain. And my experience of going down there as a kid was bittersweet. It was this mix of excitement of like, wow, there's a city. We have a city. We have skyscrapers. We have, all of the excitement and energy that comes with an urban center. But there's a sadness here. And, I came to understand it as a little bit of a war zone. I mean, it was the aftermath of a war, and that's really what it was. And I think in the aftermath of the civil rights movement and in the wake of that, and the kind of desertion of downtown by a lot of business and a lot of the white community, you were left with a lot of abandoned buildings. I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression. It wasn't like, broken glass and crack pipes anywhere at all. It was just empty.
Yeah.
And yet beautiful. And for at least for me, growing up and seeing that, it was it sucked. And for me, it was something to kind of feel ashamed of a little bit. And I always loved the city. I loved Sloss Furnaces. I loved going down to the Civic Center. I loved, back then, 5 Points South was really the kind of cultural center, nightlife center. We would go down there and eat, and there was a lot of loyalty, a lot of love for the city, but you could also tell that there was some struggle. This kind of, it wasn't like it is today. I mean, there has definitely, unquestionably, been a renaissance.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
What brought you back here?
What brought me back here more than anything was, it was probably a confluence of a few things. I'd gotten married about 25 years ago. I think I'm coming up on that anniversary. But my wife was born and raised in Birmingham. Both of her parents live in Birmingham. Both of my parents live in Birmingham. We had worked in Atlanta for a while. We'd both worked in New York City. We just kind of got to the point where we still loved living independently and out away from home, but we sort of knew that after we'd been married for a few years, looking a few years in the future, we're going to have kids. At some point, we're probably going to feel the pull and want to move back to Birmingham because we have so much family here. The lifestyle is so great. I mean, after having lived in Atlanta for a while, there's a lot to be said for Atlanta. There's a lot more of certain things that is great, but there's a lot more hassle too. And we all know transplants from Atlanta and Nashville that live in Birmingham, and they'll talk your ear off about how Birmingham is so much easier to live in. And so all those things kind of drew our eye back toward Birmingham. But, I remember we made kind of a commitment to each other that, if we're going to move back to Birmingham, and we're both born and raised in Birmingham, and we both have kind of a history and connections in Birmingham, if we move back there, we're really going to try and approach it kind of as strangers and get to know Birmingham on our own terms and the new Birmingham, and not sort of just fall back into the lifestyle or experience that we had growing up. I think that was important to both of us.
Yeah. So when you come back, I assume along the way you're listening to vinyl, you're collecting vinyl. Does that start from a child?
Vinyl, no. I only got into vinyl really in the last few years, probably during COVID. I grew up, I think, very firmly in the cassette era. And, my older brother had a turntable. He had some records. But I just kind of barely missed that. When I had boom boxes or a little stereo system in my room, it was based around a cassette player. And when I had money, I'd ride my bike to Turtles Records out at Eastwood Mall and get tapes. And I collected tapes. And then the CD thing hit and had a huge CD collection. And then when I was probably 14 or 15, I really fell deeply in love with the Grateful Dead and have remained in love with them my whole life. And that gets you further into cassette recording. And it gets you into audio in an odd way. All your friends in high school, if they're listening to whatever they're listening to, The Cure or Metallica, they've got those albums on CD and they pop it into a CD player and it sounds great. And that's pretty straightforward. If you're a Dead fan, and I don't want to go down the Dead rabbit hole unless y'all do, but you collect these live concert recordings, and every once in a while they're patched through a soundboard, and they're great, but often they're just recorded from the audience with microphones. And they're in different venues, and sometimes the tape comes from a taper who's got an incredible microphone set up and really knows what they're doing. Sometimes it comes from somebody who doesn't. Sometimes it's a first-generation tape. Sometimes it's a seventh-generation copy. And you are copying cassette tapes for friends and trading them, and you are kind of forced to learn about, how to dub tape, how to set levels, how to handle noise reduction and equalization. And so in the world of the Grateful Dead and tape trading, there's a very easy sort of path you can get pulled down into audio technology. And then, with them, with live people that kind of know the story of the Grateful Dead, there are books that have been written about how when it comes to live audio systems, concert audio systems. They pioneered what is considered state of the art today. So there's a strong audiophile kind of audio technology tradition surrounding the Dead. But for me, vinyl was not part of my experience growing up. It was more about tapes and CDs. Moved back to Birmingham in the first decade of the thousands, whatever we call that, aughts, I don't know. But it was a wonderful time in town for music. You asked kind of what Forest Park was like, and this was after college, but City Stages was big. Looking back, even though this downtown renaissance hadn't really happened, there was a much richer local music scene.
Really?
That's not Birmingham's fault. That's digital technology and the internet's fault. But more people played in bands, and there were clubs, and there was a great alternative rock scene everywhere, in the country, but in Birmingham. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that is gone today. It's sad. I think we're trying to rekindle it a bit, but I don't know where we were. We were talking about Birmingham and vinyl.
So I want to get to High Dive, but I also want to ask, have you started other businesses? Are you kind of entrepreneurial in that sense, or what led up to that decision to take the leap on High Dive?
I have. Short answer to that is no. This is the first business that I have owned myself. My career before this was centered around marketing in the publishing world, and then product development in the consumer products world with EBSCO Industries, and focused on hunting products, specifically digital cameras, game cameras. But it was entrepreneurial in the sense that it was focused on product development, and we were constantly having to imagine and create new products. And then my personal role was always kind of an assimilator of the creative customer-facing side, understanding the consumer, understanding the retailer, understanding, market research and data and marketing, and then the technical side of working with engineers and factories and designers to pull together, a program or a product. I find that's where I'm happiest. That's where I excel, where I can kind of unite the analytical and the creative. But this business, and so I feel like I've been, kind of comfortable in that entrepreneurial space. But this business really emerged during COVID. Oddly, it wasn't really triggered by COVID. I had made a career shift just a few months before COVID hit. And it was just kind of coincidental timing. But out of that, I was really wanting to get involved in real estate in downtown Birmingham and rehabilitation of a space, an old building. And we had kids, we were spending a lot of time downtown. I was gaining a lot of appreciation for the things that were being done in the city, especially by young people, often from out of town. They would come here and they didn't have the kind of defeated, cynical baggage that a lot of people born and raised here have, and they would see great opportunity, do great things downtown. And I kind of I just had this sense that I could contribute to that in some way. And that's really what this business is on one level for me, is I bought some real estate and I've rehabilitated it, and I'm a landlord. Seasick Records is one of our tenants, and And then, High Dive is separate. I'm my own tenant in that business, but it's wrapped in this larger real estate development that we call Lakeview Marina. And it just unites so many things that I am passionate about and I love, from the city to architecture, design, rehabilitating things, which my wife is an architect. We've done with a few buildings before, and then music, community. So it's, I feel very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space.
It is.
I feel like we were talking to, I think his name is Dan from C6, is that right? And he was talking about his experience working with you and how you've acted unlike any landlord he's ever experienced, in that you're trying to curate and create this place that's like thoughtful, and you're thinking about the tenants and who you want where and why, and what you're trying to convey and what you're trying to add to the city. I think it's cool to hear you kind of like delve into your vision for that. So High Dive, how did you find out like what a listening lounge was? Like, did you happen upon one before? Because I didn't know what that was until more recently, when Steven got really into vinyl and then started researching.
I thought it was hilarious so you're going to love how I came across High Dive because we talked earlier about localism. But one of my favorite things to do now that I've been running, would call myself a runner, if you will. I'm not fast, but it's just like what I do for exercise. But I've been running for a few years now, and one of my favorite things to do, because running just gets so boring, is I just like run all over the place in downtown. And I was on a run, and there's this like 4-mile loop where I'll run Rotary Trail, and then I'll just kind of try. I love running by water, so I'll just try and incorporate Avondale Park at some level on the way back to my house in Crestwood. So anyways, I ran by High Dive, and I was like, High Dive, like that's for sure like a listening room, like play on words, because I like am so obsessed with them. And then I looked at your Instagram, and I DM'd you like immediately. I don't know if you like you realize this, but you hadn't, like, on your Instagram, you had not posted about like the opening or like really what it was. I think you had just posted like the logo or something like that. And I was like scrolling, and I don't know if this stuff's still up on the Instagram. I hope it is, so anyone listening can go look at it. But it was just like you kind of just at listening rooms all over freaking planet Earth. Like it was just like kind of these like photos all the way back to like 2020 of you at like Dante's and like Public Records, and all these places that I've never been to Dante's, but I've been to places like all over the earth that are amazing. And whenever I saw one was opening up in Birmingham, I was like, this is I think God is real. Like I mean,
that must have been pretty recent for you to jog by and see the sign, because I don't think we hung any kind of
it was like
until recently.
It was like the day, I think they were like maybe like literally installing the sign whenever I saw it. Yeah.
We've tried to be pretty.
Yeah. But also it's like such a beautiful space. And Seasick, I was like, maybe Seasick is opening this up. And that was like my original thought. And but anyways, same sort of way, because like obviously you're the C6 tenant, so you probably wanted them to come, being the audio person you are. So anyways, I think that like this whole space is like really cool. So we would love to hear just kind of backstory, like why did you do a listening room? How'd you come across it to begin with?
So how did I stumble across listening lounges, become aware of them? I think I'm telling this story correctly. It's been a few years, and it was honestly the kind of one of those things you look back and you're like, God, don't really know how I learned about that. When I think about it, it kind of came from a few different angles, but I remember there was one time, this would have been before COVID, we were out with some friends at a bar downtown, which will remain unnamed. And we were sitting down in some comfortable chairs, having a cocktail, talking on a Friday night. And it was loud. And as the night went on, I just found myself getting more and more frustrated. And I have hearing loss, so look, this is not the world's fault. This part of this is on me, but I have hearing loss and some tinnitus or tinnitus and, ringing in your ears or whatever. But I just remember sitting there and these friends we were with, I was sitting next to this girl. She was talking to me, and I could not understand what she was saying. I mean, I was literally trying to read her lips. I mean, she wasn't talking across a coffee table of 8 people. She was sitting next to me. And faintly in the background, I could hear the house music going on. Not really loud. It was just the restaurant music. They were playing The Seeker by The Who, which is like this great song. And I was like kind of trying to listen to music, and you couldn't really hear the music. I couldn't really hear the person next to me. I found we walked, I don't know when I kind of had my moment of clarity, but we walked out at the end of the night, into the street, and it just felt to me like getting out of a pressurized container. And there was just this overwhelming kind of wave of calm and just the quietness and getting out of that room. And I remember going home that night and spending hours on Google reading, why are restaurants so loud? And, it was like, is there something wrong with me? Or are there other people that...
You should talk to my mom. She would
Yeah, everybody's mom agrees. I agree with everybody's mom.
Everybody's mom.
But it led me down this rabbit hole because I started to discover a lot of things. Like, first off, everybody thinks restaurants are too loud. Is the first thing you find. The second thing, I saw was that architects in the 1940s and 50s, the restaurant owners would tell the architects, when I have 4 tables, I want it to sound like I have 40. And when I have 40 guests, I want it to sound like 400. So there was kind of this idea of making restaurants and hospitality spaces feel energetic.
The intensity of density.
Yes. And I think that stopped becoming intentional. It just got baked in to the way we design restaurants over the decades. And then, I quickly stumbled on a few articles about these listening lounges. And I was like, what's this? And it was right at the beginning, which was great. I think there was a New York Times article about In Sheep's Clothing in Los Angeles, and it mentioned Public Records in New York City, and it might have mentioned Dante's in Miami. And I mean, at that point, I went on Google and Google Maps, and that was kind of it. I mean, there might have been a 4th or a 5th place in the United States, but I was just down the rabbit hole at that point. I was like, that is where I want to go. That is where I want to be. I want to experience these places. What they're describing is basically a bar, I've since kind of learned it can take any format. It could be a restaurant, it could be a coffee shop. But basically, it's a bar with a comfortable atmosphere, great food and drinks, but it's calm, it's quiet, it's relaxed, and there's great music chosen by, knowledgeable hands, played over a world-class sound system. Like, I want to do that. I want to go do that. I want to go with my wife. I want to go with my friends. This sounds like, what would be my favorite bar to go to or my favorite coffee shop to go to if it was available. So I kind of fell into that. I started reading about it. I set up Google alerts so that anytime certain phrases would appear online, I would get alerted. And I started tracking the opening of these places. And then when they would open, I would add them to this Google map I created that now has over 250 hi-fi listening lounges in the United States are on this map. And when I started, there were 5. And so it is definitely a trend that is kind of blown up.
You are the son of EBSCO. Holy cow. That is insane.
Well, I love to research.
We've talked about archiving so many times so far.
I love to research and I love to kind of dig into things. And this was fun because you're learning about something as it's happening. I mean, I could go around and, it was a year before I found another living human being that even knew about these things. Meanwhile, I'm watching it happen online. And so you kind of feel like, wow, I've discovered this trend before the world has. And then I've learned about the origins in Japan. And whenever I would travel, I would always make an excuse to try to go visit one. And there's another leg to that story as far as the backstory of this thing. And I'll try to just mention it very briefly. But personally, you were asking earlier about collecting vinyl and stuff. And I've always been into systems technology and, putting together kind of audio at our house. And I was always into having it in every room. That was kind of my main thing. It was the ability to have music on the deck and in the kitchen and in the basement, and I'd wire everything. I wasn't really educated about hi-fi or high-end sound quality until I turned, I basically turned 40, but I was on a business trip to China going to a camera factory, and I was kind of in that electronics manufacturing world, but I was in Hong Kong, and I stumbled into a hi-fi showroom and sat down and listened to a high-end audiophile system, and I don't think I maybe ever had. And it brought tears to my eyes listening to, a CD that I was very familiar with, but hearing it in a way that I'd never heard it before. And I came back, and this is about 5 years before the listening lounge thing, but I came back and I kind of fell into that hobby, and I got a hi-fi system at our house, and that's when I bought a turntable, I bought some vinyl, and I did the home listening room thing, and had a system, and it sounded really good. But I found that really wasn't how I consume music. I'm not going to go make time to sit in my living room alone, in a listening position in a chair, and actively listen to this album by myself, and I'd pull my kids in there and we'd play with it. It sounds so great. But I'm just kind of so active. I'm up and around and I'm moving around the house. And so meanwhile, I got this hi-fi system there, and I'd have friends over and we'd listen to it. It's great, but I wasn't getting terrific amount of use out of it. The whole home audiophile, which if you pick up Stereophile or Absolute Sound magazine, that's 99% of what this hobby is. This is people optimizing a home listening room where they will go sit in front of a stereo system, 1 or 2 people, and actively listen to music. When I discovered the hi-fi lounge thing, it kind of connected something with me. It was aha, this is where the world needs better sound. Not alone in my man cave in my basement. But, I want better sound everywhere. I want it in the coffee shop. I want it in the car. I want it when I'm jogging. I want it on the airplane. I want it in the restaurant. But the best place may be where you're getting together with your friends for a drink on a Friday or Saturday night, or you're going to have coffee with friends out there in the world and having a social experience, a community experience. That's where I think I would really appreciate that opportunity to listen to high fidelity music, like we kind of can at a concert, which is a great experience. But that's 2 hours and you're standing up and it's over and you go back about your life. And so when I discovered this was happening in kind of bars and restaurants and hospitality, third places, it just, I became a bit of a fanatic about it. And the more I learned about it, the more we started thinking we can do this in Birmingham. Birmingham can appreciate this. Like if we do this in Birmingham, it will be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the origin story, I guess.
That's so cool. I love that. I'm beginning my vinyl journey. I built my first setup when I was in high school. Technically, I got my grandfather's old record player and his speakers, and I set that up, and then I don't know, I listened to a Nirvana record and was like, yeah, that's cool, and then kind of moved on to the next hobby because I was 16. But Steven has been bugging me for a long time to put it all back together, and so and he gave me his old turntable, which also helped push me over the edge. But that's kind of been my. I'm trying to figure out how to listen at home, because one of the problems is my wife doesn't really like having a lot of noise in the house, and so I want to like always have something going. I grew up in a house where like my mom was playing music over our speaker system, and my dad played music, and it was just kind of always happening. And my wife grew up in a much quieter home, and so I'm still trying to figure out kind of like what that looks like at home. But dude, walking into High Dive, we've been a couple of times now. Like, I've felt all of those things you just said. I've just never articulated them, and I think it's so cool. Like, so in college, I was a sound engineer. I studied economics, but I was a sound engineer.
Very cool.
And so I ran sound for.
What are you doing tomorrow night?
I may or may not be around.
We need some.
We can talk after.
Sound engineers.
But I joke that I got like a second degree because the guy I worked for, he taught me from the basics of like how electricity works, all the way up through how microphones, how cables work. I learned on an analog board before I was ever allowed to touch an iPad, you know. And it was really cool, and so I had so much fun doing that, and I thought about maybe trying to get into like building my own home stereo system or doing stuff like that, and mostly I was like, this is just another expensive hobby, and I'm already into like cars and I like other stuff too, and so I just didn't do it. But dude, walking the High Dive, like the noise of the street, you close the door and it's just like so much more calm and quiet, like blew my mind the first time walking in. And it's been really cool going back to visit.
That's great. So what drew you to vinyl? The expense or the inconvenience?
I've had similar experiences like when you went into the hi-fi showroom in Hong Kong. It was our friend Jacob has a vinyl set up at his house, and he got some new like Sennheiser speakers or something or another, and we just went into his living room to like listen to him after he set them up, and it was some album I think I also had heard a couple of times. It was a John Mayer album, I think. And I'm not even a big John Mayer fan necessarily, but he cranked the sound system, and it was like, whoa. Like, I think it's time. Like I need to commit to this. But like I said, I'm still trying to kind of figure out how to like navigate that at home and how to like best listen to it. But I go to coffee shops constantly, and I love like the hospitality industry. And so it's really cool to see you kind of like melding those two together, you know?
I think it's a tough question, and unfortunately I think it can be a bit of a hurdle or an obstacle to appreciating better sound, is that, you know, people think, well, I've got to go spend a lot of money on my home stereo system, and you go down that path and, you know, you can spend a lot of money and it cannot deliver what you're necessarily looking for. I think for me, it's like you got to start. It's music first. It's not about the equipment. It's not about the format. It's not about vinyl over digital or anything like that. It's music first, and secondly, I think it's kind of lifestyle first. Like whenever I talk to people about getting better systems or whatever, I'm always asked first, like, well, where do you listen to music? Like if it's when you're running, think about how to make that sound better. If it's in your kitchen, think about how to make that sound better. But don't make the mistake that I made, which is like, well, I never sit in my living room, but I'm going to get this great system in there, and I'm going to change the way I live now. I'm going to change my lifestyle and go like sit in the living room quietly. I think there's a lot of things about the audiophile hobby that are kind of there's a lot, I guess I could say there, but there's a little bit of a lameness there. I mean, I think it can quickly tip into kind of a male gear hobby more than it being a music hobby. It can also kind of tip into a bougie luxury hobby more than being about music. It's about. And when I was in the process of doing this, there were just some interesting times when I would look at a speaker from a certain company, and the consumer version cost twice as much as the professional pro audio version. But the consumer version, the internal components were not nearly as robust, but it had this fine walnut finish. And the commercial kind of pro audio studio version, much more robust actual componentry. But it's, black plastic case, and it's not that attractive. And it's half as expensive. And so, what are you buying? You're buying jewelry. I mean, that's what a lot of that is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, but the sound thing, I think, is, I hope that, I don't think the high dive is about equipment. I don't think it's really necessarily about sound quality. I think it's about the kind of cultural experience, the hospitality experience, the community experience of like what kind of third space you can go to away from home and work, and what our culture needs right now. And I think sound plays an important role in that, but sound is not that thing. That thing that we need is much more, I think it's bigger. I think it's more calmness, quietness, presence, community, connection, freedom from advertising. And music can be a lever, and sound quality can be a lever that helps deliver that.
That's really cool.
I think another thing I was curious about is getting involved in the live music scene, because I know y'all have been hosting some jazz nights and things like that. Are y'all also building a venue in the back of the marina?
Yeah, it's built. It's ready to go. I mean, any day now. We're calling it the Music Park. Nice descriptive name.
Straight to the point. Come on.
But it is 2 empty lots between the location of the High Dive Lounge and then the building that Seasick and Classic Cuts Barbershop is in. There's an alley kind of between those two different buildings, and then there were these 2 empty lots. And we fenced it in. We built a stage. We put in some AstroTurf, some restrooms, a pavilion that provides a covered area for dining with some heaters and fans. So it's really kind of an outdoor dining hospitality space. Not totally different, in concept from things we've already kind of seen around town. If it's like the Edge over in Homewood or some of the breweries downtown, it's basically that. It's an outdoor hospitality space. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's definitely, it's got a great stage. It's going to be a great place to see concerts, but compared to say like Avondale Brewery, it's 1/6 the capacity. So much smaller. We are about 500 person capacity. They're about 3,000. So different, strata of like bands and everything, much smaller. But yeah, it sits right between the High Dive and kind of Seasick Records, and we'll have some food trucks, and it'll be a nice place to hang out.
Are you planning to host shows there?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And kind of all of the above. I mean, we're working on some shows, but it's the same question with the High Dive. It's like, well, now you have this room or sound system, whatever it is. You have this space, this capability that represents kind of this empty vessel or blank canvas. And the question is, okay, well, what do you do with it? Like, what do you fill that vessel with? What do you fill on that canvas? And we have our ideas, and so we're starting to book shows and populate the calendar. But it's really up to the community, or the market. I mean, what does this town want? And we are trying to be very broad and open about that. And we kind of hope that ideas will find us. And people in the community will find ways to utilize these spaces, maybe where there hasn't been a place for them before. We don't want to just do the same thing that's already being offered. We want to provide, a stage for music that's maybe not being heard or promoted or celebrated, or it could be anything. I mean, theater, spoken word. We're talking about doing some outdoor kind of yoga stuff a couple times a year. We'll have a screen, we'll definitely show like the Alabama game. It's stupid not to, but that to me is the kind of the greatest fun of it. Is you put all this work into the place and the room or the outdoor stage, and then the technical capabilities to be able to produce and promote whatever you want to. But really what that leaves you with is just this kind of challenge of, okay, now what do we fill it with? The creative programming part of it. What will this town kind of respond to? And I think we've already seen in a very short period of time that there's an appetite for live jazz.
Yeah.
That's going very, very well. Every Thursday night, 7:00, we're packed. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. How has it been managing the influx of interest? Because I feel like everybody is interested. Everybody's wanting to go. Everybody's loving it.
I mean, it's been great. The response has been great. It feels, supportive and encouraging. Managing it, we're just trying to do the best job we can. It's underneath all this, it's a restaurant.
Sure.
And, we're not going to win because we've got a great sound system. Like, we'll win with a great sound system.
Sure.
But we have to, our service and our food and our cleanliness and our comfort and all that stuff has to be as good as any other restaurant in town. And that's hard work. That's hard work to do it right, for 2 weeks, and then to do it right every day thereafter forever.
Yeah.
But we have an incredible food and beverage team that has a lot of experience. That's the part of this world that I'm kind of least familiar with is the kitchen and working in a restaurant. But we have a great team that has, again, like decades of experience, and they know what they're doing, and so They're key contributors to this adventure, and they know how to run a restaurant. I think they're trying to work to integrate it, with the vision that I'm kind of bringing of this quasi music venue thing. Like, how do you, you mentioned, building the High Dive earlier, like a recording studio. And if you get into the technology of the High Dive, that's really, and the architecture, that's exactly what we've done. We've built it like a recording studio, but most recording studios, you can't put 85 people in there with, pork sandwiches and cocktails. And so there's definitely some operational, logistical riddles there. And, I think we're doing a good job with it. But market-wise, it's been great. I mean, the feedback has been great. People come in, they're like, they say, I can't really articulate it, but I like it. I get it. Like, you come in and it's a quiet, comfortable environment with comfortable seating and good music and good food. Like, it doesn't require too much to sort of understand. I like this. It feels good in here. Then there's this programming question of like, okay, well, what do we do for these people now with this room? And what music do we play? I mean, break it down to the simplest question. And, that's something we kind of wrestle with every day. Do we ask them? And kind of leave it up to this sort of democracy of like, whatever people that happen to walk in say they want is what we are going to do. Or, do we kind of take the Steve Jobs at Apple approach, which he famously said about, he doesn't pay attention to market research because people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And there's an element of that. I mean, people don't know what to ask for from a hi-fi lounge because they've never been to one before, and they don't know what you can do. So you have to kind of lead with some creativity and give things some time to marinate and give people a chance to respond to it. So I feel like I'm giving you a lot of long answers to short questions. I'm sorry. I'm passionate about this.
I wrestle a lot, like in some ways, like with our podcast specifically, like the balance between what do people want versus like what are you trying to give, and like do you just take response and then react to that, or do you kind of pave your own path? And I feel like that's kind of this weird, to me it feels selfish a little bit, like in a way I'm an artist, like this is my canvas and creating a conversation is like the art. But I think there is this like weird, kind of hard to put your finger on thing about like you create the thing and people will find parts of that thing that they appreciate and like, and that's why they'll buy in, and it's really hard to figure out kind of that balance. Like you do kind of need to listen to your audience and understand, well, what do they want, what do they like, what do they not like, but you also kind of need to be the pioneer yourself and like forge the path. And I feel like it's a little bit of a push-pull, but I think I tend to lean maybe a little bit more towards the Steve Jobs, like, well, like, I'm going to do what I like and what I think is good, and I think people will kind of follow if I continue to do that,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a total balance, and you can go off the tracks in either direction. If you are purely just trying to be a people pleaser and, what's the most popular thing out there right now, I'm going to do that and just shovel more of the same at people, well, then you may get some sort of quick hit, but it's going to get old very, very quickly. And then you're going to be chasing that, and you're going to have no personality and nothing to offer. And you could do that with food. You could do that with, automobile design. You could do that with anything that's creative. On the other end of the spectrum, you go too far in the Steve Jobs approach, I think, where, you have this attitude of like, I am a visionary and I have this very strong opinion about, in my case, what music we ought to play, and this is good and this is bad, and I'm going to curate this, and you come into my fever dream. And to me, that tips into kind of this ego trip. It stops becoming about the community and it becomes about, the founder, the almighty sort of guy with this vision. And I think the way that I've chosen to approach that is you have to bring some vision to the table and some personality and position and something new, and you've got to go out on a limb and take some risk, and operate on hunch sometimes. I believe that this will work, and I believe this is the best way to do it, and I can't show you evidence and data of how that's been done 5 times before in downtown Birmingham, so I know it will work. You've got to get over that, but at the same time, I think you have to listen a lot, and you have to ask a lot, and you have to, as you develop that vision, you have to be observing. And at least in my case, it was very important to me not to come, I wanted to build the Hut Of as this very capable space. Then you get to the question, okay, well, what are you going to put on the turntable? I have my favorite music. Sure, I have music that I hate, but that's not what this place is about.
Yeah.
It is. We have to start somewhere. So we do have kind of a musical orientation and certain music that we gravitate towards, but we very intentionally in a lot of different spaces. If it was even the design, the interior design, the artwork, the way the staff operates, the way the menu is constructed, the music we play, we talked about leaving the last 20% blank so that the customers in the community could fill it in for us. Because that's what makes us rooted and planted and of and for Birmingham.
Yeah.
And not of and for Bart Stephens. I can get in my car and listen to whatever I want to listen to. But we want to bring, some anonymity or some sort of openness to this so that our guest and the community can start to imprint what they need on us and help us grow, help us develop, help us evolve, and help us, finish. Mm-hmm. And so we don't try to knock your head off when you walk in the door with like, this is good music and this is bad music. And I'll tell you, I take a note out of Dan Drinkard's book on this. I think he is excellent about this. But, when you hear like the phrase record store, I think, all of us can kind of tighten up a little bit. It's at least for me, the vision that comes to mind is John Cusack and High Fidelity and like the music snob. Mm-hmm. And you're going to walk to the counter with your ABBA album and the guy behind the counter is going to sneer at you or something. And especially I think, when you're younger and young men and people that pride themselves on knowing a lot about music, you kind of define yourself sometimes by what you don't like. And you hopefully outgrow that. But Dan and the Seasick record crew, in his role as just a retailer, I think sets an incredible tone about not doing that at all. They're not judgmental about music in any way. And I love that, my 14-year-old daughter can go in there and shop for Olivia Rodrigo and like, the tattooed, cool looking guy behind the counter is like, oh, that's a great album. Yeah. And then the next guy can come up looking at like, Norwegian black death metal and he's like, oh, that's a cool album. And so that's, to me, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's the essence of being cool, is being encouraging and inclusive. And that's what we want to be at the heart of. You know, no gatekeeping, no snobbery. We want to be welcoming, down to earth, approachable. That's what will make it interesting, is, you know, attracting everybody.
I feel like the final, when you mature in your hobby, you reach that stage where it's like you appreciate all of it and you're excited for anyone along the journey, you know? Like I'm very into cars. And so when I was a kid, it was like Nissans and Japanese stuff with big loud mufflers, really cool. And there's probably a little phase in there somewhere where I liked muscle cars and Mustangs, and then I got into like European stuff. I love Ferraris, and that was the coolest thing when I was like 18. And I'm really into Porsches now, but at this point I don't hate on the guy who has like the loud Miata or whatever, like I did when I was younger, because like he appreciates the hobby, and anyone who's into cars, I'm into it, because cars are awesome and it's really fun, and driving them is fun, and modifying them is fun, and looking at them is fun. And when I go to big cities, I try and go to the dealerships just to see what's new and whatever. But you know, I'm just excited that anyone else is also interested. And there's kind of, it seems counterproductive to like bash someone just because they only like a certain kind of car that I'm not necessarily super partial to. So I love that perspective.
Well, hopefully, you know, we can all start to mature. I think hopefully you know, kind of mature out of your egotistical youth at some point. And like, as I listen to you talk, like the question in my mind is like, well, does he want to be better than the person he's talking to, or does he want to find the common humanity between him and the person he's talking to? And you know, that can then be expressed, you know, in how people talk about food or cars or music or anything. But God, you miss so much if you are, you know, and it just kind of goes back into my trip about modern society and this world we're living in that no one asked for. But when you lose that common humanity, that I think we've lost a lot of. And I think it's because of the internet. I mean, I did jump to the punchline, but I mean, I think that in my lifetime, that's been the kind of biggest cultural change, and one of the saddest things I've witnessed is what it's done to our sense of shared humanity, our local communities, our ability to connect with a local community.
Yeah.
And you know, the high dive in Lake View Marina is kind of my one little move to try to push in the opposite direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's so encouraging because, you know, you very well have the grounds to be like the most pretentious person, you know.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking, you know, there's a lot of people in the service industry specifically and in the music industry specifically who could open up High Dive and almost treat it as like an art gallery, being like, come look at what I did. But I think the fact that, you know, the whole like third space idea implies that you do want to share it to a certain extent. So that's why I do think it's kind of ironic when people come in so opinionated about how they want their place to be perceived when the customer base is, I mean, it is the place, like just in general, like, yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful idea that you like left it 20% empty at the very end of it. And you kind of want it to fill in, like you almost in like a coloring book way of like, there's a lot of empty space left on the canvas that is High Dive. And it gets me really excited because we're only a few months in. I can already see how it, is taking shape, because I think thoughtfulness is so important whenever it comes to the redemptive part of the city, because back in the day, jazz was like everything. And when you think about the redemptive part of our city and the black community, like the best music ever, music that influences music more than any music in the world, came out of the black community in the South like a long time ago. And the jazz movement in Birmingham was kind of part of that movement. So I think it's so cool that you're trying to give some breathing room for that to kind of flourish again. And yeah, I mean, it's such a cool thing that you're thinking about the city in a way where you care, because a lot of landlords kind of just want to get their money and move on with their life. And, that's helpful or whatever, I guess. But the fact that you've taken time to slow down and think about how you can contribute in a thoughtful way, I think is going to have a way bigger impact than you might even recognize.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope that that's true. No shade on anybody out there who's trying to make things work economically either, because that's a very, your ability to do things is very much influenced by the business part of it working. But yeah, there's definitely an element of this that is, the business strategy is not maybe as ruthless or as cutthroat as it could be, but it's a longer play based on what can we build that will be valued by the community. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like when I travel or I visit places, like the places that make an impact on me, or you're in Cincinnati and you go to a bar and you're like, oh wow, this is the real Cincinnati. Like this place has been here forever. And I think that's fewer and farther between. It comes back to this kind of internet effect of we live so much of our lives online, looking at this kind of international or national culture, which is not local. At the same time, we're all kind of in these little algorithmic halls of mirrors, so we're not sharing, culture the way we would when we were all watching MTV and the same video. We're all listening to FM radio. And so, the idea of leaving that blank space at the hot dive and letting it be imprinted by the community, I think is my kind of move to try and make it feel authentically Birmingham. And, when you mentioned kind of like our goal for what it will be one day, I mean, I look at growing up here and being in my 20s during the 90s or early 2000s, and the places that I most associate with Birmingham, if it's like Lou's Pub in Lakeview or the Garage, who's kind of a big one, the Frank Stutz restaurants, I'll forget a bunch, but just places that are clearly Birmingham, old Birmingham. You kind of feel that old kudzu soaked iron ore South Side vibe. Those are that's what we aspire to be.
Yeah.
So, 10, 20 years from now, I hope people that walk into the hot dive talk about it, stereo, blah, 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 food, room, blah, 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 but it's this real local Birmingham vibe, whatever that is. And the only way to get that vibe, I think, is to allow it to grow on you a little bit, and like moss or kudzu, and leave some space for that. Hey, you mentioned jazz history and the African American community here in town, and I was wondering if I could convert that into a plug real quick.
Please plug yourself.
So it's January 30th or whatever.
Right now, yeah.
Black History Month, February 1st, month of February. To celebrate Black History Month, we're doing 4 consecutive Wednesdays at the High Dive. We're doing programs around Black History Month. And the first one is a is a event with some music, poetry, spoken word. I believe the second one is a storytelling event. The third one is a DJ, and the fourth, I believe, is a screening of this new film, Tuxedo Junction, about the history of jazz in Birmingham. And so all the details are on our Instagram. All 4 nights are benefits for local charities. I think 3 of the 4 cases, it's the Jazz Hall of Fame here in town and the Carver Theater. But we hope that people will come out for that.
Yeah. That's really cool. Is there anything else going on this springtime you want to plug?
Well, we are releasing our February calendar, I think, later today. We have live jazz. Well, February, we have every Wednesday night, we've got Black History Month programming. Every Thursday night, we have live jazz. Every Friday and Saturday night, we have either a DJ or record selector in there spinning vinyl. And then there's some kind of just, oddball things that are slotted here or there. Tomorrow night, January 31st, is that right? Does January have 31 days?
Sure.
Yeah, I never took the time to learn that thing. But tomorrow night, Bergen Matthews, who does Lost Child Radio on WBHM and Red Mountain Radio, he is broadcasting live from the High Dive show. Lost Child Radio, and Bo Berry is playing live jazz. So that's a little bit of an unusual Saturday for us. And then we have our first outdoor show in the music park. I believe it's April 8th, but Daniel Donato is a very hot, kind of describes his music as cosmic country. It's kind of, country-inflected jam band music. I think April 8th outside at the... That's not February. You asked about February. But that show is coming up. That'll be our first outdoor show.
It's amazing.
At the music park. And then Dan Drinkard at Seasick Records has Record Store Day coming up this spring. So that's going to be a real big deal for us.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Come on. That's amazing. Well, if you haven't gone yet, you definitely should. High Dive is already so special, but somehow it got even maybe 10x more special to me over this episode. I hope it did for you as well. It is truly so cool to hear about the dream, and I think it is so beautiful that you want to be here in 25, 30 years, and you want to be Frank Stitt level. I mean, yeah.
Your words, maybe my words. We aspire,
Yeah.
A lot of respect for people who've done it for longer than a month.
Yeah. Well, this has been a ton of fun. Seriously, thank you so much for coming and gracing us with your time and letting us pick your brain a little bit about High Dive.
Well, happy to do it, and thank you guys for what y'all do. You're doing good work for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.